Good morning and welcome to the Biology Experience. Today's topic is a day in the life of a biologist. My name is Alexander Adkins and I'm a wildlife biology major at Texas State University and I'm a senior here. And this is...
Hello, I'm Ryan Council, also a senior and wildlife biology major at Texas State. And next to me here.
Hello, my name is Reagan Wilhelm. I am also a senior and a wildlife biology student at Texas State University.
Now for today's first topic, we're going to be talking about survey work out at Freeman Ranch. So you want to take that away, Ryan?
All right, yeah. Let's start it off with just the location itself, Freeman Ranch or Freeman Center. Freeman Ranch is about 5,000 acres, is 15 minutes west of Central Texas State campus. It's composed of 13 different pastures. Got the list right here. I'm going to read down for y'all. Starting off, we got Laguna, TDN, Turkey, Fernando, Front Pasture, North Crawford, South Crawford, the originally named 100-acre pasture, the difficult to pronounce Powsey or Posey. It's probably easier to pronounce than I make it. Then we also got Never Neverland, Triangle, Below the Dam, and then the pasture that we did our work on, which is Crow's Nest. It's a lot larger than I thought it was. I knew it was big when we were working on it, but actually looking at this map here, dang.
So now for a little bit of the history and current use of the land. In the 1900s, the Freeman Ranch was mainly a cattle operation until 1981 when Texas State acquired it. Now the university uses it for the ag department for sustainable agriculture. The geology department uses it for mapping practices. Criminal justice education has a body farm located out on the ranch. They use donated bodies for science to see how the elements help in degradation of the bodies for forensic purposes. The biology department has a graduate and undergrad research, and there's hunting practices as well on the ranch.
Now for our location specifically, we had 3 patches on Crow's Nest. And Crow's Nest itself is a 392 hectare large patch of land within Freeman. Our 3 patches that we had were 9 patchy, 8 closed, and 7 open. And 9 patchy is kind of like the middle in between patch. So that one had a little bit of a mixture of oak and juniper as well as open patches of grasses. And 8 closed, now that probably was the hardest one to get to. That was mainly oak and juniper, so it was quite a hike through that to get to where we had to get to. And finally 7 open, that was really easy to work with. It was just basically a wide open field of grasses, easy to walk through, easy to survey in, not bad at all. But for our patch, that was the furthest away patch out of everybody that had to do this. And it was a 20-minute drive out there just to get to our locations itself. So that was quite a hike out there.
Sorry, that's not including the drive to Freeman Ranch, right? So we drive to Freeman Ranch,
no,
and then 20 minutes from the front. Yeah.
Now for the goal of our work, I'm going to let Ryan once again take that.
Right, yeah, so the goal of what we were doing out there essentially was just determining the environment and what we could do with it or help to improve it. So we were just collecting data to figure out what kind of plant life was growing in these different plots and what certain distributions. We also collected some other stuff, so certain data in those plots for the plants and animals, which we'll go over in the future. Yeah, essentially just determining the environment and what's out there and what we can do with it. And with how we collected all that data, I guess I'll start off with one of the types of tools we used, which was the densiometer. Now this is a pretty interesting tool. I'm glad I have notes on how to describe it because it's just, I'm having a hard time imagining it right now, but it's a mirror reflector. Engraved within it, we got 24 different squares. On each of those squares, we have dots or corners that represent the points, making a total of 96. And what we do is essentially hold it up to our chest level, and without having our head or anything else obstructing the reflector, we essentially count how much cover, or like tree cover or bush cover, I guess grasses too, is obstructing those points. And so we'd count how many of those 96 points are covered by any foliage, and then we'd take that data back out of the field and multiply it by 1.04, and that would give us the percent cover.
Now for another tool that we have the Robel pole. which uses the 4 cardinal directions, and this is a 20 band high pole that has alternating points, like alternating bands of black and white. You use the 4 cardinal directions and you will read how high each side of the vegetation is touching, and the last point or the last band that the vegetation touches on is the height that you use. You want to take the next one, Reagan?
So for the line transects, we used a 100-meter measuring tape. Pretty self-explanatory to use. You unwind it. One person takes the end and walks to 100 meters. We laid it on the ground, and we were able to do our plant surveys with it. The biggest problem with it was winding it back up. Sometimes it got knots and twisted, and it'd take us 30 minutes to wind it back up. As well, we used the GPS. We used it to help us find our plot points, which were already programmed in. We used the Garmin model. It was very helpful at some times to find our transects. Now, while all of these tools were helpful, I think we had more problems with all of them than any other groups that were out there on the Freeman Ranch with us, wouldn't y'all say?
Yeah,
yeah.
Definitely.
And that one time we had issues with the GPS specifically, because we also got out to the field earlier than the other groups because of our distance restrictions.
I think on all the days we were out there an hour and a half earlier, right
about the time before anybody got out there, and we'd stay pretty much till everybody else left as well. So we were out there by far the longest.
Mm-hmm.
And on one occasion, our GPS was completely dead. So the only way we were able to find our point was we'd already previously been to it, so we knew how to get to it.
Yeah. That's where double checking your tools is very important. Like, we already had all of our stuff stationed for us to pick up when we got there, but even then, we could have and should have looked at the one GPS. But we figured it out. We got to contact our lab instructor, and it was a hiccup, but I'm glad we were able to manage and find our plot easily.
Well, for our next section, do you want to bring it up again, Ryan? We're going to be talking about survey techniques, and you'll start us off with your lovely scat.
Oh,
Mr.
yes.
Scat
Not
Man.
mine specifically, but the scat that we were finding in the field. It was great. No, yeah, strange amount of fun doing this. We weren't able to see as much of the mammals while we're out there. I guess the more I'm in the field of wildlife bio, the more evidence, I guess I would like to say, I'll enjoy. So every time I saw poop, I got very excited. Yeah, I mean, we did see a lot of cattle scat out there, being a pasture or ranch for cattle, that is to be expected, but it did take a majority of the findings. There was also a lot of hog, which I wasn't able to ID at first. Reagan, thank you so much for helping me with some of those IDs. And yeah, so we got the hog scat that came in all sorts of shapes and sizes. The easier ones to ID and all the others were raccoon. We also had deer and rabbit, right?
Yes.
And yeah, it actually wasn't as easy to ID, the rabbit versus the deer. That was a lot more of a tricky thing that I didn't realize how similar they looked. Yeah, it was weird. I got more and more excited as that study went on.
All right, for our next survey technique, we did herp boards, and we didn't really have much success with this technique. We didn't really let them have time to acclimate like you properly should, about a year for the herps to kind of like discover it, get used to it, and move under it. And basically what a herp board is what it sounds like, which is a giant wooden piece of board, a plank, that you lay down, you lift up every now and then and check if anything's underneath it. Since the acclimation time was so short, there wasn't really anything at all that we found under there. I mean, if anything that you would find, it would be bugs, unless you did wait about a year for them to discover that.
Because the acclimation time, those boards were only out there for like a few months.
If that. Our next technique, we have line transects, and for these, again, it was using that tape measure. We would go out 100 meters per transect, and we would walk along them for our plant surveys.
Or crawl.
If you had to go through spaces. And we would measure out the distance that each type of plant was at. So we had like forbs, we had grasses, we had woody debris, we had woody veg, and we would measure those out and make sure we would be pretty accurate. I mean, you'd have at times a single plant, but you would kind of like overlook that if it wasn't the majority. And we would measure that out. We had a total of 3 transects per plot that we did. You want to continue us on with our last technique, Reagan?
Sure. Next we have the bird point and count. For that, we'd go to the middle point of our plot. We would allow for a 2-minute acclimation period, and then we would sit there quietly for 10 minutes listening and trying to see if whatever birds were in the area. The best time that we found to do this is right before daybreak, which is known as the dawn chorus. It's when all the birds start singing and letting the others know that they're in the area. We were able to see quite a few birds, and we were able to tell what kind of habitat they were in. Most of our findings were by sound.
Now for our next section, probably one of the most important sections for, at least if you're wanting to get into the field of biology, is why did you choose this? And at least for me, that was just growing up around it on the bayou. I'd be outside every day, going through the woods and finding stuff, basically being around animals my whole life. And I didn't want to give that up. I really wanted to continue that throughout my life. That's kind of why I got into that. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, very, very similar in that sense of just being surrounded by wildlife essentially my entire life. I grew up right next to a wildlife preserve for the golden-cheeked warbler. Maybe when I was a little younger than 10 years old, I might have wandered in there once or twice. That ended pretty quickly because my dad taught me how to respect the land, and I came from a family that was very conservation driven, and I was very aware of it early on. I just loved working with it, and one thing I didn't expect is I love working with the people in it as well. As much as I thought I would be only working with animals and wildlife, now going into it, I'm starting to realize a lot of it is having to work with the community and other people. And it can be mildly frustrating, but it's very rewarding, and I would say overall very enjoyable and educational. Reagan, how about you?
Well, growing up on a cattle ranch and being around wildlife my whole life, out in the deer stands with my dad and hunting, appreciation grew for the wildlife around me. And I want to be able to go to work every day and enjoy what I do and not have to lay in bed dreading of the day I have ahead of myself.
All right, well, those are some great experiences, guys. I'm glad y'all shared that with us. Now, finally, if our audience wants to become a biologist, if y'all are looking into that, there's a couple different ways you can. And Reagan, you want to tell us about the first way that's recommended?
Sure. The first way would be going to a university that offers a wildlife program. Texas State University has one of the biggest wildlife programs in Central Texas. If y'all are interested, go to txstate.edu and you can apply for the program or just check out more information about it.
And what about you, Ryan?
I would love to talk about essentially the volunteering opportunities that people could get with wildlife. You can go from volunteering for grad students and professors and doing actual research and collecting data, or you could even just work with your community and involve yourself with conservation efforts in that area. For a while, I did some work with the Greenbelt Alliance, removing invasive species, and you can do something like that. I know some folk that did work with volunteer work with raptors, where they're actually getting hands-on work with hawks and eagles and owls. And the list goes on. There's some amazing stuff you can do. Basically just scratching the surface. There's always opportunities out there. You just gotta look.
There's a thing for everyone out there, that's for sure. And finally, one of the good key factors also is doing some networking. Networking is always important, whether you want to find the right school, if you want to volunteer, or even if you're just looking for a job. Networking is important, getting out there and talking and making those one-on-one connections that will really last you your whole life and open up a lot of doors for you. Besides all the technical and academic side of things, there are things other than that, like having fun during field work. Would y'all like to share some fun experiences we had?
I think the one that stands out most to me is after we got done collecting all our data, we were hot and tired and getting ready to go back to the university. We're driving along and then a snake comes across the road and I slam the brakes. Me and Alex are running out of the truck and poor Ryan is sitting there.
I panicked. I didn't know how to operate a door apparently for a second. For a minute. It felt like a minute.
Fight or flight, Ryan. Fight or flight.
I was amazed. I was just enjoying the scenery and then instantly y'all were like, snake! Instead of trying to swerve out of the way not to hit it, you swerve to stop. To chase it.
Hey, what can I say? That's just the mindset of a biologist.
I know. I love this group of people.
What about your fun scat experience, Ryan?
Oh,
you want to share that?
That was great. You guys will never let this go. Just collecting all the scat. I remember the rainiest day where it was just brown wood and foliage everywhere on the floor. I picked up this piece of wood, did a fake taste sample test. Y'all looked genuinely concerned. It was.
I'm not gonna lie, I definitely was.
Yeah, that was funny.
I've never seen someone try to taste poop before.
Yeah, I've seen it on the nature shows, but that's it. I don't think it's required or necessary.
I didn't want to believe that you were doing it, but at the same time, I had my doubts.
I know. That was just Hopefully, I'm pretty sure it's just a piece of wood.
And then there was your fun transect adventures, Ryan.
Yeah, I guess all the dirty stuff you gotta make fun. Dealing with
yeah.
scat or crawling on your hands and knees through some of the woody debris.
Or just letting out some anger and yelling transect as you're, tossing the tape measure through the brush.
Oh, that was great.
That was awesome.
Or tying the tape measure on your belt and
Oh,
just
yeah.
taking off running.
Taking off.
Yeah. Hey, I think that was actually a pretty effective method. I mean, some of those goofing off moments, you actually find things that are kind of helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah,
That is a
yeah.
really helpful technique. I mean, you don't have to worry about having your hands,
Yeah.
tied up. You can use it.
Almost took my pants down, but besides that, it was a pretty straight line. I mean, like looking back at
It really was. I mean,
Yeah.
how more straight could you get than just being able to see right
Go
in front of you and
straight,
walk?
yeah. That was a blast. Seriously, though, also having good people to enjoy the work with us is
Definitely
it's a
a
blast.
big advantage. All right, guys. Well, this has been the biology experience, and once again, I want to thank you for stopping by and listening to today's topic, A Day in the Life of the Biologist, and we hope you come back again. Thank you.